Hello and welcome to a very old-timey episode of Pittsburgh Sports Memories podcast. I'm your co-host Steve Wirt, and as usual, I'm joined with,
Tim Hannon.
and today we're going to talk about the '90s Pirates. Tim, do you remember the '90s Pirates?
Yeah, I love those early '90s Pirates teams. Those were great.
Yes. So, unfortunately, in this episode, we're not talking. Well, not unfortunately, but we're not talking about Sid sliding or Barry Bonds or Jose Lean. No, we're talking about the worst team in Pirates history. That would be the 1890 Alleghenies. So the story of this team, it's kind of they were thrown together in the aftermath of a rival league. To form a team, and they end up having one of the worst records in baseball history, and actually the worst record in Pirates history. Although they didn't play the same amount of games as some of the 1952 Pirates, winning percentage wise, they're definitely lower. So just an intro. In 1890, in case you were wondering what was going on in the world, and I could not believe this when I looked this up, Tim. On December 29th, 1890, so this would have been after the season was completed, the Battle of Wounded Knee happened.
Wow, that's
and
a long time ago.
yeah, like you never put like it's always interesting. You ever see like those timelines sometimes and they overlap and they have everything going on in the world. And it's like always interesting to see like, oh, the Ming Dynasty was before the time of Christ or
Hmm.
stuff like that. And this is one of those weird ones where like I can't believe like people on the east coast of the country are like all into baseball and interested in recreation while we're still putting Indians on the reservation and slaughtering them. Because this is basically considered the end of the Wild West. This battle, it's not much of a battle. There's a struggle over a gun. The Indians are supposed to turn the guns into the army, and during the struggle, like supposedly a gun went off by accident, and they just started shooting. They brought in artillery, which had exploding shells, and they just killed not only the men but women and children. It's a horrific moment in United States history, probably one of the lowest parts in our history, besides forcing people off their land. We slaughtered them while they were starving, and it's just a horrible nightmare. And it happened in 1890. Who knew?
Wow.
Well, presiding over this mess was Benjamin Harrison. Uh, he was president. He had been elected in, I think, 1888, I want to say. And he won over Grover Cleveland. And he actually he did not win the popular vote, but he won the electoral college, Tim. So that has happened before. Although people say this is unprecedented, it is not unprecedented. And Benjamin Harrison was a Democrat. So there you go. None of this has happened before. Guess what else happened, Tim? Idaho and Wyoming became a state in the middle of the season in July. So when the Pirates started playing in March, Idaho and Wyoming didn't even exist as a state.
Wow.
Hey, there was a worldwide pandemic going on. That's consistent. The Russian flu. See, back then when you're allowed to call it after the place where it originated, like how they used to call COVID, at least Trump did, the China flu. They called it the Russian flu, but then, we had to call it the Asiatic flu for reasons. In 1889, it killed 13,000 people in the United States and 1 million people worldwide. So pretty bad. And this period is known as the gay 90s. Not, and this is the term gay obviously meant like happy, carefree, not your sexual orientation. And there was a lot of like as this period became like more in the rearview mirror and in people's memories, it became very nostalgic. Like if you ever watched a lot of old Hollywood movies, like they seem to always go back to this period in time, like Hello Dolly or what is it? Meet Me in St. Louis. A lot of those movies are set like in the 1890, 1900 era. So
Yeah, it sounds like a really happy era with, the slaughter of all the Native Americans and a worldwide pandemic flu that killed a bunch of people. I can't think of a happier time.
I think like sometimes in your memory you forget that happened because it happened at the beginning, and then
Yeah,
as the rest of the decade stuff like that really didn't happen. So
yeah,
maybe it
yeah.
was like the turning point. Like, oh, we put that behind us. Maybe people look at this era like, oh, we put that COVID stuff behind us, and we got on to other stuff. I doubt it, but hey, whatever.
Grover Cleveland losing that election, by the way, you talked about unprecedented. At the time, it was unprecedented because then he,
Yeah, he ran again and won again the
yeah,
next election cycle,
yeah. So
and
he was
that's now happened twice, so that's not unprecedented either.
right, right.
What would you say, non-consecutive presidential terms.
Yes, yeah. Guy is president for 4 years, loses for 4 years, then is president again for 4 years, and like you said, it finally happened a second time, and
Well, yeah, Cleveland and Harrison, talk about things going circular. Harrison was big on tariffs. Funny thing about that. And Cleveland was kind of like, whatever about tariffs. So the Democrat big on tariffs and the Republican kind of about them. So yeah, go figure. Um, the Alleghenies were founded in 1881. This is the baseball team, and they played in something called the American Association, which is not the American League. It's a different league that folded. Just for a little background, the National League, which is now the National League of Major League Baseball. Major League Baseball has two divisions, which were leagues in it. They had American League and the National League. The National League was founded in 1876, and that's why it's called the Senior Circuit. It's much older. I don't. Do you know when the American League was founded off the
yeah,
top of your
1900 or 1901,
head? Okay,
right around that time frame. That was Ban Johnson founded the American League.
yeah, so
That was later.
24 years before 25 years before them. So in 1887, the Alleghenies leave the American Association and join the National League. This is considered the beginning of Pirates history. Um, they were called the Alleghenies by the papers of the time. The official name, and I think this is kind of a handful, was the Allegheny City Baseball Club, which just rolls right off the tongue. So they just called it Allegheny City, and you said, that's kind of weird. Why would you name them after the county, not Pittsburgh? Well, Tim, here's some more history. I love this episode because I got to really go down some fun rabbit holes in the history. And I think you know this, too. I think we've mentioned this before. Um, Back then, the city of Pittsburgh did not include the north side, which included Northview Heights, Perry North, Spring Hill, Troy Hill. Like you go up that hill there behind North Side, and all those neighborhoods were part of Allegheny City. And some of that was called Deutschtown down on the north side because of the large German population. Actually, my wife's family goes back 3 generations in Deutschtown in that part of the city. My family is newcomers. I'm sorry. We only moved here in 1978, so we're a bunch of newbies. You know how Pittsburgh is, Tim.
Foreigners.
Yeah, yeah. So that's why they're called the Alleghenies, because they played in Allegheny City, not
Ah,
Pittsburgh.
okay.
And so
Interesting.
Pittsburgh did not annex Allegheny City until 1907. And so that's kind of what happened. They annexed Beachview, I think, at that time. I think we mentioned that in the previous episode that they had met that 1907, or I think 1908. We
Yeah,
had an episode
1908. Yep,
that
is
we
when
talked
Beachview.
about. Yeah,
Yep.
because the city started annexing everything except for Mount Oliver. Mount Oliver somehow fought off. They went to court and fought off the annexation. So, little fun fact about Mount Oliver.
So,
Um,
so, so that thing you said about the team name, have you noticed, Steve, that team names seem to be kind of free for alls again? Like,
yeah,
you
there's
know,
pirates at this time. There's actually a Chicago Pirates, I think, but they're in the rival Players Club league. There's a league called the Players Club, and that's gonna come into play here. Yeah, and like there's like a Giants. I think there might be two Giants teams in New York, and there's a team named the New York Bridegrooms in the national. No, but they're in the National League with the Alleghenies or
And
Pirates.
and some teams have like more than one name that they refer to. Like
Yes,
like Boston when they were before they were the Red Sox, it was like
the Bean Eaters, I think,
or the Pilgrims or the Americans because they played in the American League.
yeah.
It was all these like these free for all names, but I feel like we're kind of getting back to that point. Like you talked about things being circular because you have like the Washington football team for a year or two, and then you had like the Utah Hockey Club, and then they
Yeah.
changed their name, and like this season in baseball, you have the Athletics, but they're not a city athletics; they're just the Athletics. It's like it's
Yeah, no, they're not the Sacramento Athletics.
right, but they're not the Vegas or Oakland Athletics; they're just the Athletics. So it seems like team names are like going back to that free for all era just a little bit.
Well, it is. I don't know. It's not the. It's the not the. It's the Roaring Twenties. So I don't know. Whatever. The year before the Alleghenies in 1889, they were mediocre. They finished 61, 71, and 2. It wasn't like they were this great team that got broken up. They had some decent players. They were competitive in the National League. Okay. So where did they play? They played in a field called Recreation Field. And Recreation Field and Exposition Park are two separate fields, which I did not realize. And I actually looked up on the north side. There's just a big warehouse where Recreation Field is. Exposition Park is in one of the parking lots of I think Heinz Field. There's actually a home plate designated because that's where the first World Series is. But the Players League team, which was named, you're going to love this name, Tim, the Burgers, like the Pittsburgh Burgers, like, which makes me really hungry. But yeah, they played in Exposition Park, and the Alleghenies, which where the Pirates played, in Recreation Field.
So where exactly was Recreation Field then? Was it
It's like back in the part, like behind, like over by, like I want to say, where the Humane Society is on the north side, not there, but like a couple blocks back behind there.
okay? So further away from the river
Yeah,
than
yeah.
Exposition because Exposition Park was like
Park would
right on the
flood it.
river.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and it would flood it. So I don't think they would flood as much back in Recreation, but now it was converted later because, like, I tried to look up the seating, and they list the seating at 17,000, and I don't think in 1890 they had 17,000 seats. I think that was the final construction because later in its life, Barney Dreyfus, the owner of the Pirates, bought that field and turned it into like a racetrack and made it so just so you couldn't play baseball there. It's very petty back in the, yeah, not petty, but I mean it's actually smart business wise, so nobody can compete with you.
Mm.
Actually, fun fact about Recreation Field: it's the site of the first professional football game. There is a marker for it, but it's nowhere near the field. It's somewhere down on the north side. Like, how those Pennsylvania has those little historic marker things. That was the first. It was there in 1892, the first professional football game. So it was actually 2 years after the season. The Alleghenies only played 3 years there, 1887 to 1890. I think it had a capacity of 2,500 at the time. If I don't quote me on that. That's kind of what I'm inferring from the sources I was reading. So the Alleghenies do move to Exposition Park in 1891. Um, there really isn't, like I said, a marker for that Recreation Park. It's just in a warehouse. There's a warehouse there. So maybe I'll do one of my little man on the street things for our Facebook page down there. I'll go in front of the warehouse.
Yeah, I'd love to see where it is.
Yeah. Um, like I said, the rival league called the Players League started a team in Pittsburgh. They started a team in all these cities that had National League teams. And the reason were, as they always were, was the reserve clause and low pay. And you might say, Steve, what is the reserve clause? And I would say it was a clause represented in 1879, which did not let the players negotiate with other teams in the league. And it meant the teams held the rights for the players for the entirety of their career. Imagine, Tim, if you worked for McDonald's and they would say you can't work for any Wendy's or any other fast food restaurant. So it's definitely was very restrictive, and it led to it like just gave the owners an excuse to not pay the players. I think they went on. I don't know if they went on. They tried to go on strike. Eventually, in 1975, they did get rid of it, and that led to the free agency period of that baseball is now in. And I don't know, for better or worse. It's. I mean, the reserve clause. It was a bad deal. It wasn't fair to the players. It's, you got to pay the players. It just held down the wages of the players, and that was the point of it. It
Yeah.
did make the fans loyal to that player. Like Ted Williams never played anywhere but the Red Sox, which was kind of cool.
Yeah, but then, like you said, Ted Williams could have probably, and it's not just that guys could have gone somewhere else. It's the fact that there was like a free market. So maybe Ted Williams still spends his whole career in Boston, but Boston, knowing that another team could sign him, is going to pay him more to stay. So you're right. It definitely cheated a bunch of players for a bunch of decades. It just made them property. And I think baseball, other leagues have figured this out and have kind of mitigated this with salary caps. It's like, okay, let's kind of even things out. Let's not make it a free for all. But baseball, kind of like the way college football is now, when baseball got into that mode of like, oh, we can go anywhere we want, then it turned into a free for all, and they've yet to mitigate it.
Yeah, it doesn't do well. I think I've said this many times about baseball. Like the Yankees think they're competing against the Pirates, and they are on the field, but for market share, they're not. The market share they're competing with is the Rangers, the Knicks, the Jets, the Giants
Mm-hmm.
of football. That's who you're competing against. And Pete Rozelle in the NFL realized that the New York Football Giants were competing against the Yankees and the Mets, not the Jets. I mean, so I just don't. I think there's like, and I've said this before about current baseball, is there's two groups that very benefit from having this system. It's the few players like Otani and the Scott Borases, the agents, and the rich owners. And I don't understand why there's a lot more of the Bob Nuttings of the world and the players that make minimum salary or middle of the road salary than there are Otanis. And if they would realize that, and if I was a small market, I would say, well, we're going to give you a salary floor, which means you're going to get your wages raised. You can outvote. They still, as far as I know, Scott Boras doesn't get any votes in the union, and Otani only gets one. So I
Yeah.
don't know why baseball can't figure that out, but I digress. Um, Fred Carroll was one of the Alleghenies' best players. He definitely went to the Burgers, so that hurt. We'll go through some of the other players here in a minute. Style of play. This is the dead ball era, Tim. Yay! We don't hit a lot of home runs. Like you hit 10 home runs, you've had a great season. You could do and a lot of things, like they would use the same ball for most of the game, which is like wild. So like the ball would get like all worn out, and more importantly, it would get really dirty, so you couldn't see it as well because it would not be white anymore. It would be brown, and obviously somebody throwing hard. There were not a lot of home runs, and there was no pitcher's mound. I found that interesting. There was just a box they painted in the dirt. So I always wondered why they said, "Oh, it hit back through the box." Like I've heard that saying before, and that's apparently allusion to 19th century baseball.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Uh, Here's
Interesting.
another fun fact: baseball gloves. They're just, hey, we're going to start using them like right about now. So especially catchers and first baseman, but I think everybody by this point is probably using a glove. Maybe not. I don't. You don't have to use a glove, I guess. I don't know if it's a rule now, but back then they were just definitely catchers, and the catchers didn't wear like the face guard, like the little shin guards, the chest protector. I think the Pirates catcher, actually named Doggy Miller, did not wear a chest protector. He refused to wear one. So I couldn't imagine playing catcher. So I guess that comes into play a little bit during the season. Is like the catchers, when nobody was on base, would play like way back, would like back all the way up to like whatever the backstop or the fence, because it's easier to catch a ball, when
Mm.
you're further back, obviously.
And the gloves, weren't the gloves like very much very thin?
They called them more like pillowy, like they weren't like they are now, where you can really squeeze. It was like, you couldn't catch it; it would just kind of bounce off it, I guess. Or, and
Okay.
like you said, thin. They weren't very good. Like
Yeah.
I couldn't imagine playing catcher or first base without a glove. That's impossible.
Yeah.
Like people literally gunning it as hard as they can at you. Even third base without a glove. Ouch. Whew, I'm getting out of the way of that one. They did obviously no helmets, and I don't know what the bat regulations were, but and also limited substitution. Tim, you could only have 3 subs per game, and the fourth was only allowed if somebody got injured or ejected. So teams would carry like 15 players. You'd only like, now what's the modern day roster? Like 24, 25, I think, after
Something like that with
September. I
pitchers.
think,
Yeah.
yeah, I think September it goes up, doesn't it? I think it's
Yeah.
like 2020, then it goes up a couple. But yeah, the home team also, how about this, Tim? The home team could choose whether they wanted to bat first or play the field first.
Oh, that's kind of an interesting.
Yeah, yeah, isn't that? It's like football, very much like, do you want the ball first? Or do
Yeah.
you want it? Yeah, I mean, and I guess people hadn't figured out how much of an advantage it is to bat last. I
Right.
mean, so I mean, maybe people, it's got to be like everybody was just always choosing to bat last, because it's like, how many runs you need, and if you score a run, the game's over. Like that's the biggest thing, is like if you're in the ninth inning and you score the run to go ahead, you're going to win the game. So that's a big advantage at home. So, and also the Alleghenies didn't play games on Sundays, which for one of our players is going to be very important. So, like I said, a bunch of players left this team to go play for the Burgers. One of those players was Fred Carroll. He was a good hitting catcher, career batting average of 284, 27 home runs. This is actually the guy that buried the pet monkey in Recreation Park.
Oh, I remember
So,
we talked about that. Yeah.
yeah, maybe when I do my man on the street thing and I find I know where it is. I looked it up on Google Maps, so I wonder if the monkey is still buried there. Um, Pud Galvin. He actually is. He went to the Burgers also. Hall of Fame pitcher. He's in the Hall of Fame. He's the first 300 game winner in Major League Baseball history, so that's obviously a major loss. Ned Hanlon. He became the manager of the other team. He had managed the Alleghenies the year before. He's also an MLB Hall of Famer. He won the pennant 5 times, but not with the Pirates, Alleghenies, or Burgers. That was with Baltimore and then Brooklyn. Jake Beckley. I think he was a first baseman, or yes, first baseman. You know what his nickname is? Old Eagle Eye. That's like
Lord Eagle Eye.
yeah, that's
Earth
like
Lord
such
Eagle Eye.
that's like such a 19th century name. Oh, Old Eagle Eye over there. An Old Eagle Eye was a bit of a, I don't know, Barry Bonds type. I don't know, Barry Bonds type. I don't know. Maybe that's unfair. I'm trying to, maybe Derek Bell type. He said, "I'm only in this game for the money."
Wow. Some honesty.
he was Operation Shutdown back in 1890.
I bet Twitter, 1890 Twitter was pretty upset about that.
It's like extra, the little like newspaper boy on like the corner of like Bifton Forums. Extra, extra, Old Eagle Eye says he's in it for the money. Forsooth, I can't believe that. My honor, sir. Have you no honor? The honor of the glory of Allegheny City in baseball cannot be sullied by your greed. Never mind. Old Eagle Eye needed more money in 1891, so he came back to the Alleghenies. So, I wonder what he was spending his money on. I don't know. Alcohol, maybe alcohol. I don't know. Anyway, here are the people that were played the 1890 season. Some guy named Frederick Crazy Schmidt, and he was a pitcher for the Alleghenies. He was named Crazy for his off the field antics. In the book I used and on the papers I searched for his name, I could not find any stories of his off the field antics. So what a letdown, huh, Tim? I guess we could just make some up. I don't know. I don't know why he was called Crazy. He just was. It's 1890. You figure it out.
He once swam across the Allegheny River in
January.
December.
Yeah, yeah. Guy Hecker, he was this is like an interesting thing. He was the manager, but he also played first base and pitcher. It's weird that he managed and pitched for the team. Um, Probably the person that you'll recognize the most off of this team was a gentleman named Billy Sunday. Have you ever heard of Billy Sunday,
Yeah.
Tim?
Yes, I have.
He was their starting center fielder. He was considered one of the best base stealers. The according to he really like this is the tail end of his career. He's finishing up. He really couldn't get on base a lot, so he didn't really get to take advantage of his base stealing. What he did after baseball is he became a famous evangelist and led many crusades. They called them back then. I guess they used to call it the kerosene circuit. He would go around and have these camp meetings. He actually went to the White House at one point. Very influential religious figure, early 20th century. Sound about right, Tim?
Mhm.
He had like a very like more like if you remember Jonathan Edwards, Sinners in the Hands of an Angry God. Remember we had to
Mhm.
read that, that kind of style, scare them into heaven. You're all going to hell if you don't watch my baseball game. But good for Billy Sunday. They didn't have to play on Sunday. To his credit, I guess he was a man of his word. He wouldn't leave because he was under contract with the Alleghenies, so he stayed with them. Um, there you go. A guy I mentioned early, Doggy Miller. I don't know what his name is, Dogie Miller. I don't know. He was a catcher. He replaced Jake Beckley. He actually was still on the team in 1891. When Beckley came back. Um, I don't know. I guess he played first base too, maybe. He got relegated to a backup. He led the team that year in most offensive categories in 1890, 150 hits, 24 doubles. He had 68 walks, 66 RBIs. He was the only player to play from 1890 to 1891 for the Alleghenies. He didn't leave. He didn't get cut. He didn't get traded. He actually went through all this ridiculousness. So he's got that going for him. You'll say, who owns the team? Bob Nutting. No, he does not. Um, William A. Nimick. It's like very shady. Like, I guess, once again, like baseball wasn't as like big as it was big, but it wasn't like people really cared who owned the team a lot. So in the paper, like we think he owned the team, but I don't know how much he ran the team. Supposedly he owned it with four other people. He seemed to leave the running of the team to a gentleman named J. Palmer O'Neill. And that leads us to the team executive, Mr. J. Palmer O'Neill. He's the Alleghenies team vice president. He declared early in the season after watching a couple practices of the 1890 team, and this is, quote, I guess it was 1890. Maybe nobody remembered later in the season. We've got the best team we've ever had in Pittsburgh.
Uh,
And like, it wasn't like they ever like won a pennant or anything. They barely won 500. Like the other couple teams, the other seasons were like had like records that were comparable to that other record, if not worse. So they employed 25-cent baseball. I guess the price of a baseball game was 50 cents. Could you imagine getting in a baseball game for 50 cents, Tim? I don't know how much that I imagine that was,
sure. More
worth a
than
lot.
50 cents. Yeah.
Now I didn't do the conversion from $1990, and it was real silver too. You figure that was like when they minted those coins, they were really made out of silver, not whatever the fake crap it is now. They did this to draw fans away. This is like so petty from the Players League team. across the
Oh,
town.
so they just
Yeah,
like
they lowered they did like you know how Walmart or like
right.
other businesses will do that. Like there'll be this other business across town, like Shop and Save or something, will have bananas on sale for like a normal price, like 50, not expensive, but not a great price. So Walmart will like cut their price in half because Walmart has stores all over the country and they can do that. They
Yeah.
call it, what do they call that? Predatory pricing.
Right.
So it's
Right.
kind of like that. Whereas I guess he figured he could survive losing some money if he could put the Players League team out of business.
So
Um,
so Steve, the Players League, the I can see where this is going, right? Like you said, the Pirates lose all these players to this rival league, but they're not the only ones, right? I mean,
no,
there's
there's player league. I didn't look up too much about the Players League. They had teams like in every city at that time. Like I think New York had a team, Philadelphia had a team.
every city where there was a National League team, they
Yeah,
tried to
pretty
put.
much. Yeah,
So all the other National League teams were losing their players too.
correct. Yeah, I
Okay.
would assume so. I mean, I didn't. Let's again. I only kind of focused on the Alleghenies and slash Pirates. I did not. I assume that happened.
Well, I'm just saying that like
Yeah,
the them getting
maybe
gouged isn't unique to them.
I would say not.
Okay.
So, uh, Ed Sales, he was a replacement, midseason replacement, really a minor leaguer, never played in the majors after this season. I'll mention him once here. So let's get into normally of the highlights. I'm going to go with the lowlights this season. So the season starts out with the bang with the 1890s papers. You got to remember there was more than just the Post Gazette back then. There was like whatever the press was called. There's like 5 different papers because there's no news. Also, like I forgot to mention this. Like remember, there's no cars, right, Tim? So the only way to
Yeah.
get from like Pittsburgh to Chicago or New York is on the train,
Right.
or unless you're riding a horse. I mean, yeah, like my wife's grandmother told me stories of her father who lived on the north side at this time making deliveries for the hardware store he worked for with a horse in like cart.
Hmm.
So there's no vehicles. I mean, can't imagine what the roads were like. They're all like country roads. So it's like I think there's telephones, Tim. I don't think there was telephones yet, right? Or very
There would have been the invention of the telephone. I don't know how widespread it was
right.
at that point.
And same thing with electricity. I don't
Yeah.
know how much of the city was electrified. Maybe Allegheny City was electrified. Maybe it wasn't. So like they couldn't play night games. Obviously, they didn't have that kind of technology. But very interesting time without. So you figure, telegraph or I guess when the pirates were out of town, I guess they would get like the or like the little ticker thing. Like I don't know if they even had like the little stock ticker thing. So
Yeah.
very interesting. So papers before the season called for the team to relocate to Indianapolis. That's not good.
Why? Just because they
They were
stunk,
said
or
they were I guess they were so bad and they liked all the players on the other. I guess they wanted them to leave so they could keep the burgers. Is my only way I could
okay,
surmise. Yeah,
okay, because that's where all the good players went,
yeah,
was to the
yeah,
burgers. Okay.
yeah. On opening day, the attendance wasn't bad for them. They got 1,200 to 1,500, so maybe that's like half crowd, half sellout. But then as this team stunk, they actually did win their opening game. I think it was I want to say against the Reds. And the Reds were good that year. And this is the Reds, the Cincinnati Reds that still exist to this day. And yeah, they played, and then on April 22nd, after opening day, they played a game with only 80 fans officially. But there's internet rumors that there were only 17 fans at this game.
Oof.
So that's a problem. Also, a mitigating factor was once again I mentioned Indianapolis and Washington were supposed to have teams, so there's supposed to be a 10-team league that year, and with a 128 game schedule. And Washington and Indianapolis would have been either minor leagues or expansion league teams that made the jump. And unfortunately, both those teams backed out or folded. So they didn't have those two teams to play against. So it went to an 8-team league, and they had to play, instead of 14 games, which they would have each played against each of those teams, that would have been 28 games where maybe they win half of them. They ended up playing 20 games against these 8 other teams. So so they ended up with a tougher schedule, which didn't help the Alligators. The best game of the year was in preseason. They played preseason, Tim, even back then. And the preseason teams they played like teams like Altoona, Wheeling, McKeesport. I guess they had like semi-pro teams back then. And they played McKeesport. It's hard to believe the Pirates playing a team from McKeesport.
Wow.
Hey, that's playing a team from McKeesport. I think in McKeesport too, probably. And they scored 34 runs against this semi-pro team because there's no spring training. Like I said, 25-cent baseball. I'm not sure if they charged higher. I don't know if the whole league did this or just the Alleghenies. So it seemed to think like the Pirates were making more money when they went on the road than they played at home games. I'm not sure if that's just because the games were better attended on the road or if it was because 25-cent baseball or because a little bit of both. So,
by the way, Steve, I did look it up. It's 25 cents in 1890 is about $9 today, so still a pretty good value.
yeah, I mean, you can't get into a Pirate game for $9 now.
No.
Yeah.
You can't even get a beer for $9 in a Pirate game.
Yeah. Amazing how much things have inflated. How much more important people like baseball now, too. So with the 25-cent game ticket price, the team needed to have 600 fans to attend to break even because they had to pay the visiting team $150 just, to show up. And so I guess, they would start losing money because they didn't have, like, most of their fan totals were like 400, 500. So you're losing money. Never mind, you have to pay your own players. You can't even pay the fee of the team. And then there were rumors that the team was late on its rent at Recreation Field. But then it only came up once and then it went away. I don't know if they paid or made a deal or what. And so what happens is late in the season when they really start to stink, they like reschedule a lot of games out of town so that they make a better. So number one, they don't have to pay they get the $150 fee. And number two, they don't have to pay it,
So it's actually more profitable for them
to pay out of the, yes. What a weird, yeah. Because back then you got to remember there's no TV deal.
Right.
The papers don't pay to cover the team. They just go there and pay a ticket and cover it. And obviously you wouldn't charge them to because you want that publicity. So, it's a weird, like the only way they made money was on the gate,
Yeah. There's like no other, you're right. There's no other revenue streams.
Advertising, but I don't know,
Sure.
like I think that was more of a 20s and 30s things maybe as things went on, you could sell advertising the outfield and stuff.
Yeah, and you could I don't know if they had concessions at the game back then, that'd be another way. But you're basically everything's dependent on attendance and there's really nothing else. You're not selling jerseys in the pro shop. You're not, you're right. There's a lot of things you're not doing.
And I will say, to his credit, J. Palmer O'Neill does say he wanted to make a better experience for the fans with his discounted baseball. So they added a roof area, I guess, to Recreation Field to shield you from the sun and the rain if there was a little bit. And also he wanted to add padded opera chairs. I don't know what that is, but there's some sort of section with padded chairs.
Sounds
and also,
comfortable.
Yeah, and also a ladies section so that they could get away from the rowdy fans. Woo! So those ladies didn't have to hear all those drunken. And there was a lot of gambling back then. Like, you obviously didn't have your phone. You didn't have any phone, maybe. Especially like people are paying 25 cents for a baseball game would probably have to use a public phone, And, so you would go there and like, I bet Billy Sunday steals a base today. And somebody goes, I bet you he doesn't. And you would trade
Wow.
money at the end of the game,
So
or
they had like
yeah,
the
yeah,
Insta bets even
yeah,
back then.
yeah, or prop bets, or
Yeah, yeah.
I bet I don't
Yeah,
know.
this got 4 RBIs and 3 strikeouts.
I bet,
And
yeah, Guy Hecker doesn't pitch today. I don't know. Also, Jay Palmer and Neil did clever promotions like stating that it's not a sin to steal a base. Obviously referencing Billy Sunday. I think Billy Sunday actually still he had converted, even because it's late in his career, he had actually converted. He'd become more, I don't know, fervent in his religious belief. Is that a thing, Tim?
hmm,
And he might have been actually preaching on Sundays at this time. So
okay. And they didn't play on Sundays because of the blue laws, correct? It
I
wasn't
didn't I didn't look that up. That's probably yeah, because remember
yeah,
they had to change that for the. I remember going over that in 1933. That was a big
right,
reason the Steelers were able, like Art Rooney was able to get them to change the blue laws. So
right.
it might have just been a cultural thing too, Tim. Because you remember, there there was a like in England. I want to say in the late 19th century and early 20th century, there was a great what they call Great Awakening, and anything that happens in England culturally seems to slowly spread to the United States, and so that was one of those things with D.L. Moody and all those great preachers of the 19th century.
So you're saying there were blue laws, but probably people, even if there weren't
I
blue laws,
don't. I
people
think I don't know when the blue laws started, but I think even if there wasn't blue laws, it would have been like something so like culturally taboo that they just wouldn't have done it because nobody would have showed up. The blue laws actually prohibited it, correct? But
okay. Yeah, the
like,
blue laws started with the Quakers. I mean, the blue laws
oh,
were
okay.
around in
Well,
the
then
1600s.
you definitely couldn't do it. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
So, but I think culturally also people probably wouldn't have gone for it.
Gotcha.
Anyway, anywho, um, went over the price. They're going to, and they go on a 33 game road trip in May. A 33 game. I mean, so once again, we're going to play a lot of games, even in May, out of town to make money. Doggy Miller, in this, got a $10 fine against the New York Baseball Giants for arguing a strikeout. And in the middle of it, he's like, well, make it 20 then. And the umpire was like, just get off the field. I don't how much was $20. It had to be like thousands of dollars now, right?
Yeah,
Like,
that's pretty expensive.
yeah. Uh, the team ends up losing $5,700 for the season, which doesn't sound like much now, Tim, but I'm sure that was millions of dollars back then. Um, it's funny they had a season ticket promotion early in the season. They're like, come down to this pharmacy and wherever and buy your season ticket books. And they're like, we've sold tons and tons. And then halfway through the season, they revealed, oh, nobody bought any.
Oh dear.
Which actually benefited them because in August they were able to move those home games out of town without like upsetting anybody because nobody had tickets.
Wow.
So it actually worked to their advantage, Tim.
Smart.
Yeah. Once again in June, they've made some changes, but not a lot. And Jay Palmer O'Neill, not one for sticking his foot in his mouth, not once with the greatest team ever, but twice. There will scarcely be any changes to the team from now on. I believe we have a better team than has ever before. In reality, they ended up using a total of 46 players in a season. And actually, that lasted as a record until the 1987 season, Tim. And
Wow.
20 of those players were asked to pitch. Here's a fun one. So when you're, when you're a bad team and you're having a bad season, right? Everything just goes wrong. So Ed Sales, who I mentioned earlier, hits a home run, but unfortunately it hit a tree and it bounced back into the field of play. And I don't know if they didn't have ground rule double or what, but they just said, nope, it's a double, not a home run. You get to stay at second.
Wow. Was the tree like in the outfield?
I don't know. He also committed 4 or 5 errors in one game. The paper stated that poor Ed was afraid to get in front of any ball. Fred Clement, I do believe he was a shortstop. He got one game trial, and he only got 2 innings because he committed 3 errors on 5 chances. And Fred was a dentist by trade, and the paper said that his play was comparable to him pulling teeth. I hope he was a better dentist than shortstop.
So they're just pulling guys off the street at this point.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like, hey, you want to play? I'm a dentist. Whatever.
Like Gay Palmer O'Neill just went to the dentist. He's like, hey, we could use a few more guys. You ever played shortstop before?
It's like,
no.
I'll give you $5.
Yeah, right.
You'd have half the gate. Anyway, it gets more laughable as this is like insane. The Alleghenies record by month is a fun stat. In July, 5 wins and 21 losses.
Ouch.
That's not good, right?
No.
In September, 4 wins and 22 losses. And the pièce de résistance, the heart of the season, August, the ultimate insectitude, Tim. Have you looked at the notes? Can you guess how many games they have won in August?
3.
You would be too high.
Oh my.
At least they won one more than the 2008 Detroit Lions. They went 1 in 27.
Oh.
Out of 28 games, they won 1 in a month.
Wow.
Thank God a lot of those were on the road. People just weren't showing up. In the book, I based a lot of this on a book called The 1890 Pirates, The Worst Team Ever. It's by an author named John Decker. He's a local historian. Does a great job. It's an okay read. It's very detailed on every game. If you want to read about every game that happened in 1890, he's your guy. If you just want, I kind of went through and just tried to pick out the fun parts because I wasn't sitting here and reading on July 5th, they pitched they lost 23-3. Yeah, I wasn't doing that. But anyway, he does a very good job on, giving you a feel for the season and, a lot of nice background and stuff. So pick it up. It's not a bad read. They allowed 330 runs and only scored 113. I think that's just for the month of August, Tim. I think. So August was really ugly. So ugly, in fact, that on August 22nd, they trade one of their better players, Billy Sunday, to the Phillies for a left fielder, Eddie Burke, and a pitcher, Bill Day. According to the author, Burke was younger and healthier and the better players at this time. And there were rumors that Billy Sunday was going to retire after the season. Billy Sunday denied them, said, no, I'm in it for the long haul, and then promptly retired after the season. So I don't know if I didn't look up whether Burke or Bill Day. I've never heard of them. Not that I've heard of a lot of players. I've heard of Cap Anson. I know he was mentioned a couple times. I think he played for the Giants, I want to say. I've heard of him, but just from the Mr. Burns baseball team episode of The Simpsons. But anyway, it's a pretty crappy season. They finished with a horrible record. The aftermath here, Tim, it's a disaster. The Alleghenies finished with a record of 23, 112, and 2. That's a .169 winning percentage. There's a controversy whether the last couple of games were official or not. Baseball Reference counts them as 113 games. The attendance for the league for the whole season was 16,000.
Combined?
Yeah, I think so for the season.
Oh my, wow.
Now, in contrast, I don't know how accurate this is. I found this on the internet. The Burgers published their season attendance at 117,000. So I mean, even if you figure they got half that, it was still 50 or 60,000, which is double the attendance of the Alleghenies. So
Right. Right.
they beat them the hands down by a wide margin. Um, they finished, no, not surprisingly, 66 and a half games out of first place behind the Brooklyn Bridegrooms, Tim, which it's just a weird name. What's a bridegroom? Is that like the male
That's
guy?
the groom.
Yeah, that's what bridegrooms.
Yeah,
So they just dropped the bride and went with groom because it sounded weird.
I believe so.
Yeah, the bridegrooms, which are now the Brooklyn Dodgers, I do believe. They went through like 5 different names before they finally stuck with the Dodgers. So the Burgers also had like a very mediocre season. I think they finished like either with a losing or 500 record. Oh yeah, 60, 68. And they were 20 games out of first. So the Burgers didn't do that much better anyway. So even if all those players would have stayed, I don't know, maybe against the lesser talent, maybe they do okay. I don't know. The 1952 Pirates for the modern contention are considered the worst team of the modern era, and they had 42 wins and 115 losses, and that would have been a 162 game season. I did not write down their winning percentage, but it's definitely, I guess, you know,
It's better than
who
it's
wants
better
the
than this. Yeah.
all you math majors divide 42 by 115, and you'll figure
Well,
it out.
this team had the worst winning percentage, like you said.
Yeah,
If you just go by winning, because you had different eras with
yeah,
different amounts of games in a season.
yeah.
This was the worst winning percentage, 1890.
I looked at MLB history. The White Sox, who I saw in the 2024 season in a game against the A's, I got the witness history, Tim. I got to see one of their 41 wins. They had a winning percentage of 200, 253. The Mets in 62, what was that? The lovable loser Mets, 40 and 120 at 250%. And of course, the all-time worst, the
Spiders.
1899 Cleveland Spiders at 134 losses and 20 wins, 130 winning percentage, which is actually a higher winning percentage than no, it's lower. And actually the papers did reference the Spiders losing that 134 game because that was, or the 114th game, that where they said they set the record when they did that over the Alleghenies. So I guess the Alleghenies for 7 or 8 years had that record of the worst losses ever. So obviously for obvious reasons, I mean, I don't think Pittsburgh had reached its max. Like for a while there in the 1920s, Pittsburgh, do you know Pittsburgh was one of the top 10 cities by population there?
Right.
But I don't think Pittsburgh was there in the late 1800s. Definitely the steel mills were going full blast. And Andrew Carnegie and, all the steelworker guys, Henry Clay Frick and all of them were having fun. But they couldn't support 2 baseball teams. That's the point I'm getting at. And, it's pretty obvious that, Pittsburgh's just a 1 baseball team kind of town. So after the season, the Players League actually folds. So I guess they just didn't have enough money to sustain what they're paying the players. They probably needed to be played more, but there just wasn't enough money at that time. So the teams combined in 1891. The players were from the rival league were expected to go back to the teams that they had left. So that's why Beckley and all them went back to the Alleghenies. So, but there's this manager, Ned Hanley, and he's the manager of the Burgers, but he goes back to being the manager of the Alleghenies in 1891. So rumor is that winter, he went all the way to Erie in the middle of a winter, crossing a frozen bay to sign a second baseman named Lou Beyerbach. This move was considered piratic by the Philadelphia Athletics. And, being the 1890s and it sounded like a cool nickname, they went with the Pirates. And it's been the Pirates ever since.
Yeah, that was super controversial. I think we had talked about that at one point in an earlier show because, like you said, when that Players League folded, it's like, okay, everybody, because
just
of the
go
reserve
back
clause,
Yeah.
Well, and that was, hey, like we said, the reserve clause basically made the players property.
Yeah, you couldn't
And
poach. I think too, like it protected teams from other teams poaching their players too. So it worked that
right,
way too.
right. But when they all left their contracts to go in the other league,
Yeah.
they technically didn't just return to the same contract. And I think Philadelphia even took them to court and lost because a judge, I believe, ruled that, like, no, this guy, he was under contract in 1889, but then once this new league started and he came back, he technically wasn't under the same,
Mhm.
rule anymore. So
Early free agency. He might have been the first free agent
he
too.
kind of was the first free
Yeah.
agent, and I
Yeah.
think that all the players and the owners and everybody just assumed, like, it was almost like a gentleman's agreement that no, like we keep the same players, and for the Pirates to go out and steal one of them, he was a good player too, so that's why they were so upset about it. Yeah, that's why they started calling them the
That's
Pirates.
that's why Ned Hanlon was crossing frozen
Yeah,
bays in the middle of winter in Erie. Oh God. And he once again, like he had to take the train to Erie and like a horse or something to to get there or walk in the middle of winter in Erie. Have you been in Erie during the winter, Tim?
yeah, yeah. But that's kind of funny, isn't it? That the team name is because
Yeah, because
fans
they
in Philadelphia were ticked off and were
yeah,
like making fun of and
yeah,
derisively calling them this name.
yeah. And it's
You
like,
know,
we'll just take it. It's like, yeah, taking it and using it for
yeah,
your
feel like
thing.
if the Flyers were called like the Goon Scumbags or something. It's like, oh yeah, we'll just keep that name.
Yeah. The team really wouldn't be any good until 1900 when Barney Dreyfuss bought the Pirates, and he folded the team called the Louisville Colonels into the Pirates, and they end up. I guess he called it the pennant. I don't know. It wasn't called the pennant. They just won the National League champion, the National League in 1901. They whatever that was, they won it, and they didn't play the American League back then, not even in an exhibition. So. Um, this is kind of a forgotten team. It's a legacy probably most of anybody who's relative to these poor people would want forgotten. I'm sure Billy Sunday's relatives probably don't would rather him remember for his evangelism rather than his 1890 baseball playing. But worse, do you think they're the worst than some of the modern teams, Tim, or mitigating circumstances?
Yeah,
Not
I mean
sure.
it's interesting because our record wise they're the worst. But I mean that would be like if remember when the NFL had like the strike and they used like the replacement players?
But the
It's
Steelers got better.
well, yeah.
Yeah.
But I'm saying
Yeah.
imagine they do that for an entire season,
Yeah.
and one of those teams could have easily been 0-16 just because they got the dregs of whoever was left, and it sounds like that's so yeah, they're the worst, but it's kind of like you said, mitigating circumstances. There's like a little asterisk
Yeah.
on that one for that reason.
Yeah. It's tough to compare. Like, I'd say the Cleveland Spiders probably are worse in this era just because
Even them
they,
though, they there was a whole the guy that owned them owned some other team, and he like moved all the good players from the Cleveland team over to his other team. So like that, like I think a lot of those teams have mitigating circumstances. That's why like the modern, they always say modern era versus
yeah.
non-modern era because it's just
Like,
different.
what excuse do the White Sox have?
Right, right. Or the Colorado Rockies this year,
Yeah,
or like
I meant to mention that. Yeah, they've only won 8 games that first. I mean, now if they go one for whatever in August, then I'll be impressed.
yeah, I mean, there's always going to be bad teams in any sport in any league. Uh, but yeah, that's the worst pirate team ever.
Yeah, in college football, wasn't there like a Prairie View team that lost like 30 in a row, 20 or 30
Yeah,
in
it
a
was
row?
like multiple
Yeah,
years in a row
yeah,
where they didn't win games. Yeah.
yeah. So I mean that's all I can think of. Great interest. Like I said, the book is the 1890 Pittsburgh Alleghenies, the worst team in the Pittsburgh Pirates history. I used some statistics. I got the story of the Pirates thing off the Major League Baseball website. Some stuff off the Pirates website if you want to check anything like that out. Obviously, there's no video. I don't even have a picture of Recreation Field. I think we have a drawing I found on the internet somewhere. There's no. I saw a few baseball cards of some of the players, like obviously Billy Sunday later because he lived in the like 1939 or something. So there's pictures of him, like obviously outside of his baseball career, but most of these guys there really isn't any pictures of. So
Yeah, it's hard to find information. So you did a really good job researching all that. I love that. I love that old baseball history stuff, Steve. So
well, it's fun that there's a controversy over how many games. Like this guy in the book, I went with. I think he goes with 113 losses. I think or 112. Like so, there's even because they played some like games after. Like they had such a bad season, then they played like 3 or 4 more games after the season is over. Who the hell cares at this? There's no way you're making any money on this. I mean, it's the most insane. Like, who would play more games with this team? Like, I could see if you have like a championship team and you want to, but they actually played like more games. It's like, what are you doing? Let's lose more money. I guess it's like, what do they call it? The lost revenue. You know, you're just going to keep digging. Hopefully, you dig yourself out. Anyway, well, this is a podcast where we never want to dig out. This had a lot of fun rabbit holes. I had trouble like staying on topic because there were so many fun rabbit holes, like, you know, and trying to figure out how it all, you know, give you guys a good context of what was going on in 1890. So besides us slaughtering Indians, you know, apparently. But if you enjoy this, you know, definitely check out our podcast for more fun. I don't think this is a subject that many other podcasts have covered, Tim. I don't know. I bet we're the only one. So yeah, check us out on Facebook. I'll try and get that man on the street interview done. I'll find Recreation Field. I promise. Look for that on Facebook, and you know, it'll definitely be me in front of a warehouse in Northside, trying not to, you know, get in any trouble. Thanks for watching and listening, and as usual, God bless, and we'll catch you next time.